What's a red flag when looking for a job? If the job description has about 20 items, of which one is sales, your job is going to be sales. If the job description has multiple items, then the majority of your duty is going to be the worst one of those items. Earning potential is stressed over current salary. I applied to a place where they were offering me 30% less than what I was currently making. They said that's because you'll be making that up in your performance bonus plus more. Hard pass from me on that one. Such a slap in the face of an offer. Master's degree preferred for an entry-level job. But the worst part is that they are getting what they ask for. I've been applying to so many master's degree preferred entry-level jobs and always getting passed over for other people with a master's that have 10 plus years of experience and are perfectly willing to take entry-level pay. Making jokes about overtime and crunch time. Guaranteed it's going to be a nights and weekends are optional, but not actually optional, place. I went to an interview where the guy said we don't end the day until everyone is done. And sometimes that takes another hour on a busy day. Then my genius brain said, yeah, I don't want to work constant overtime. What was I thinking, expecting to go home when my contract says I go home? In reality, maybe an hour overtime can easily turn into 2 hours overtime every day. Having to pretend this is normal is toxic AF. Initially unpaid, but will result in full-time offer upon completion of ZIS. This will be an excellent chance to expand your portfolio and gain lots of exposure with leading global brands. High staff turnover. There's a place near me that's always hiring high-level tech folks, and I mean always. Just makes me think, meat grinder. We work hard and play hard. It actually means all work, and for sure no play. Translation, you will work 60 plus hours a week, and are expected to come to the company happy hour, whether you drink or not. Hiring lots of people on the same position. Everyone who calls gets a job. Often means the job is either bullshit, or they're setting you all up to compete for the actual job. I had this once. Turned out it was commission only, door-to-door vacuum sales. I did that for a month. My breaking point was when I was told I couldn't carry any water with me in what is essentially desert climate in middle of summer. Was told to request a glass of water from random strangers. Same if I needed to use the bathroom. I wound up so parched I was risking real dehydration, and the other salespeople had the nerve to drink all my water. Oh, and I sold a grand total of 3 vacuums. I actually has 5 sales, but I quit on a Friday, and by Monday they claimed my last 2 sales were cancelled, and I now owed them something like $150 for accessories. Convinced them to zero out my entire account and just close it. Eater, since I have a lot of replies asking which vacuum, it was Kirby. When they just talk previous employees, they're going to do it to you. Same goes for them insulting current employees behind their back. I saw that during my orientation. 2 supervisors were loudly talking about how useless an employee was after they got off the phone with him. Even if it's true, the fact that they don't care who hears them is a sign of a toxic work environment. Always ask them why the person you are replacing left the job. The way they answer this could be a red flag. I took a security guard job in college as a part-time gig. In the interview, the owner said the guy I was replacing was just lazy. On my first day I asked one of my coworkers, and it turns out he was shot in the face while on duty. Too lazy to drive himself to the hospital, I guess. We are a family here, which means this is how they try to make up for the chisty pay and long hours. This is the one I was looking for. Yes, it's a family in the sense that the company expects me to be willing to do anything to help you and your company anytime, anywhere, anyhow. You and your brothers and sisters, aka the other overworked unappreciated peons, are conditioned to work harder to help each other out. The problem there is that the only people who benefit are the people at the top. It's essentially a predatory practice designed to force extra effort out of you by abusing your empathy and your connection to your coworkers. Johnny McCorporate, a duckbag, literally wouldn't flinch if you dropped dead at your desk from the stress. He would just be pissed at the loss of output and immediately be concerned with finding a new cog for the machine he calls a family. I got a call from a Subway I applied to telling me my interview was in 10 minutes. That was the first I heard from them after submitting my application. So, years ago, my old company was hiring a mechanical engineer job, but the director of the department suddenly had a family emergency and had to go out of town the next day. They called the last applicant and said, "Can you come in and interview? Like now?" The candidate explained that he was out and about and couldn't get dressed or anything. The director basically said, "Don't care." That's how the dude that got the job got to interview in a black band t-shirt and ripped jeans. So, before you red flag it, make sure that a sudden interview isn't warranted. A former coworker shared this tidbit with me years ago and it works wonders. Try to schedule your in-person interview as late in the afternoon as possible, relevant to your position. If you're expecting a 9 to 5 job, schedule your interview for 4 o'clock or 4:30. You probably discussed after hours work etc during the interview. When you are done, you should be able to look around. Are people still working? Is the parking lot empty? You can match up the evidence with what was claimed during the interview and from that, judge how realistic the entire job description is based on how they treated the after hours work. Just make sure there isn't a staggered schedule or multiple shifts. Most of my positions are listed from 8 to 430, but about half the office works 6 to 230 or 9 to 530. Then since most of my salary guys want to climb the ladder and appear busy, they stick around for 15-20 minutes to leave after their bosses. This was a red flag I had during an interview process once. I was doing a phone interview for an IT position and the person I was interviewing with basically changed the details of the job during the interview. Instead of the first shift hours a position promised, he immediately went into saying it would be 6+ months before the opportunity for first shift would even be a possibility. Also, he was begin to asking how dedicated I was to jobs. The idea of weekend shifts, again, not in the original description, kept coming up, and how everyone had to be a team player and help out on weekends when needed. The kicker was when he started talking about how many hours he worked. He was bragging that he was up at 6 AM every day working, then he'd go into the office for the day, come home to see his family for dinner, and get right back to work until 10 to 11 PM every night. I had never been turned off from a job faster in my life. He asked me to think things over, and he'd send me some paperwork via email. Needless to say, I called him the next morning and declined the job. It was the worst interview process I'd ever been in. I'm in it as well. Some of the interviews I had before landing my current job were very similar. Had one interview where the manager belittled one of the techs just before he walked into the room. Probably didn't realize the door was open lol. I'm really lucky though, since my current position is awesome. I work with some really friendly people. It's a small company and that's what I prefer. Couple of things. Open interviews, admittedly I've fallen for this a few times, but I was young and stupid. It's clear they have a high turnover, so they are trying to secure as many people as they can. Most of the time these open interview jobs don't have salaries, just commission. Refusal or reluctancy to share details over the phone. This is what usually ends up in you turning up to an open interview. If they withhold information about the role, what you'll be doing etc., that's a huge red flag. They just want to get you in the door for an interview, to pressure you into joining. I've been seeing this a lot. What is an open interview? If you ask them what the pay is, and they start off with what you could be making after so much time and they start rambling about the raise process, run the other way. During my last interview for an entry-level semi-skilled press operator position, the hour guy says my pay will be like this. If you hit your rate every day, factor in your attendance bonus, then if you go over rate we'll pay you piece rate. They don't, I checked, and if the packing line gets your orders out on time and your quality is high enough, and we don't get docked with any fees, a process over which I'll have no control. After I wrap my pallet, you'll be making $15. 20/hours, or more if you sign up for Saturdays. But that's not what I asked. I asked what my base pay was going to be, to which he replied, 1061/hours. No thank you. I've never heard such a complete pile of rune around bullshit. Looking for rock stars in the job description, unless of course the posting is in fact for a position to be a rock star. Similarly, ads that read along the lines of, do you like sports? Come be a part of our team. We are laid back and have fun. We want all of our MVPs to succeed, So we work hard, and we play hard too. If they are trying to sell you on the work environment in the ad, most of the time, you should run. I'm sure there are exceptions, but most of the time, you can substitute rock stars and sports and MVPs in all these ads interchangeably, with all of it loosely translating to, we are gonna load a bunch of you up in a van at the but crack of dawn to drop in neighborhoods for door-to-door cold calls selling cutlery. Arrived for an interview not too long ago. Showed up 15 minutes early and had all my certs to prove training. Waited over 20 minutes before the secretary led me to a conference room. Waited another 40 minutes and got fed up. Quality manager walked in as I was getting up to leave. He was very offended when I told him he had wasted my time and I would never accept a position after being left to wait almost an hour while having an appointment. Drove an hour and a half to a job interview once. The interviewer was traveling, and I was supposed to meet them in the business center of their hotel. Waited for a little over an hour. Nobody showed or called me. Tried calling them, straight to voicemail. Got fed up and left. 30 minutes into my drive home I got a call back. They wanted to know where I was. Apparently they were in an important meeting that ran long, and couldn't call me or email me to let me know. Got calls from them for a month trying to set up an interview despite me telling them I wasn't interested every single time. Job description: you will be in charge of the online marketing. Because of that, we expect that you will also be the web developer, photoshopper, community manager, coffee maker and Ricksucker. That kind of crap will tell you if that business understands the role they are looking to fill or are just expecting some kind of magical entity that will do everything online related by himself. Yeah, definitely this. Make sure you have a clearly defined job description and not one that is vague enough to have a lot of tacked on bullshit. Any job that requires an upfront cost. This is a telltale sign that you are getting wrapped up into a MLM pyramid scheme. No, I will not pay for my uniform to work at your pizza place. Are you insane? Manager who doesn't really interview you or who doesn't take the interview seriously. They are on their phone the whole time. Don't ask any questions. Too casual. Edited. Too casual doesn't mean creating a relaxed environment or rapport with interview candidate. Too casual, in my experience, was the guy, director of marketing, wear jeans with a hole near the crotch and sitting with his legs open on his phone the whole time, spitting chew into a can on his desk. Or the guys who have interviewed me and littered the interview with F-bombs and other vulgarities. Or talk chiz about unknown common acquaintances. Things like that. When they do this most of the time, it means they will hiring anyone showing up to the interview. I turned down a second interview for a position in which the interviewer said something to the effect of, if your boss emails you on a Friday night, you don't have to respond, but you know how that looks. Made it pretty clear that they expect work to be your first priority. It looks like I don't want that job, lol. When they say you could be earning 6 figures in less than a year, when the posting lists the salary ranges $50, 000, $300, 000, that means it's an all commission sales job. A employer who treats you like they are doing you a favor. With good servant leadership, it should be the other way around. An unclear job description, or a job description that includes too many duties. Not being offered the opportunity to see the working areas or talk to people who would be your peers. Just generally trying to feel out whether or not they have things under control or not. I don't want to walk into a chiz show. Finding good servant leadership is so freaking difficult because A, they're rare, B, they already have a loyal team that will be reluctant to leave, or C, they do so well they keep moving up. When you find a good leader that you respect and get decent comp/benefits/work-life balance, cherish it. I remember a specific red flag from when I was interviewing senior year of college. Went to the initial interview, hit it off with the guy right away. He was the supervisor and the type of guy I could see myself being happy to work for. Went to their office for a second interview. Everything went great. Met the rest of the team. They all seemed like nice people. Plenty of other young folks just starting out who seemed cool. Just all around a nice place to work. They were a small division of a large insurance company. Great benefits and corporate resources, but plenty of autonomy to do the kind of specialized work my degree was for. It was also local. I was basically debating between this and one other job which was out of state, so location was a big plus on their side. About a week goes by and I get another email. The supervisor tells me that they're all sold on offering me the job, but they need me to come in again. Apparently, that week they'd been bought out from their parent company by a consulting firm whose entire business was our specialty. This firm was fairly notorious in our industry. They had a reputation for snatching up half our graduating class every year, burning them out with unrealistic benchmarks and expectations, losing almost all of them to better jobs, and doing it all over again the next year. They were also expanding at an alarming rate and gobbling up a lot of smaller firms in the process, some of which had been around forever and had great reputations in the industry. Word was that they weren't run by people with any experience in our field. It was some Wall Street finance guys who ran it purely to increase profit and shareholder value. Very little concern for quality of work or quality of life for their employees. I went in for this third interview, and it was a completely different vibe. There was a new guy from the firm making the acquisition who I did not vibe with at all. He really did not seem like the type of person I wanted to work for. They also suddenly wanted me to relocate. They did a weird dance of bragging that I could go anywhere because of their nationwide footprint, but also heavily implied that they were gonna make me go to Atlanta. It was weird. I didn't like any of what I was hearing, and I didn't really hide my skepticism during the interview. Slept on it for a few days and made the call to take the other offer I had. That was a relocation too, but it was much closer than Atlanta, and the job itself was much more of a unique opportunity. Lower pay, but better benefits/security. I'm still at that job now, almost 4 years later. Never heard a word from the other guys since that third interview. I think I really would have liked working for that original firm pre-acquisition. It's wild how quickly that dynamic completely shifted. I'm just glad it happened before I signed on to work there. They did a weird dance of bragging that I could go anywhere because of their nationwide footprint, but also heavily implied that they were gonna make me go to Atlanta. That would be a deal breaker for me. For me when they do open interviews, lol. 1000%. I used to manage restaurants, and in my time doing so, I swore I would never put on RE ad aboard anything like now hiring all shifts, open interview dates, etc. The closest I ever got was putting up one time, now hiring one great AO shit. And your point is both for potential employees and consumers, because I'll never willingly go to a restaurant that says now hiring all shifts. I can only assume the service will be dogchers, if for no other reason than lack of experience. Requires 10 years experience, 2 master's degrees. Start. 8. 50 hours. You also need to wipe every onesies and make tea and coffee. They're unbelievable. They expect way too much from people, especially if the job has only existed for a few years. I had a team lead interview me for a contract once say bluntly, "You don't want to work here, it's horrible." He was right and still undersold the experience somehow. And you still took the job. Come on, man. Family owned and operated. The family members will not be held to the same standards as you. At my previous job, it was well known that the easiest way to argue against the owner was to get one of his sons to do it for us, as they could fight without the fear of losing their jobs. In reality, the owner appreciated when people would go against him, but only if you had good arguments. It seems like a few people failed to convince him in the past and the store is stuck around. If the offices such as hole/bathrooms are dirty, TL, doctor, cheaper owner, this is kind of an odd one, but here is what happened to me. I left a decent size, 400 employee, successful company because my career path was dead-ended. I had 2 positions above me. One was my boss, who was not going to retire for 20 years, and the VP, who was above him, and also not going anywhere for 10 years or more. Took a job at a much smaller company, 70 employees, but it had a ton of growth potential. It was a small company on the verge of blowing up and getting big. I didn't pay a ton of attention to my surroundings, because I was too excited about more money, growth, etc. The offices were a dump and the bathrooms were disgusting. There were two reasons for this. First, the company was small and growing and somewhat cash poor. Second, the owner was cheap as duck. In my time there, he would frequently make comments like offices don't make me money and bathrooms don't make me money, which, on the surface, is true. However, people don't like working a dump. I had a job in it, and we would end up cleaning the bathrooms on a rotation. I'm not above scrubbing a toilet, but no one told me, when I was hired, that I'd have to wipe up piss. I might have reconsidered taking that job. Over the next couple of years, the company did grow, and they did hire a cleaning company and they did invest in the offices, but the first 12 months or so were not entirely what I expected, especially coming from a company that prided itself on nice, clean, modern facilities. I will say this though, the owner's cheap mentality was a continual roadblock for me in my time there. I eventually became director of operations, and it was a constant challenge to deal his step over a dollar to pick up a dime methods. Here are some examples of his idiocy. Only the owner, the VP, and the financial guy were allowed to have company credit cards. I was a director of operations with 65 employees under me, and I had to get petty cash from accounting, or use my own credit card, and get reimbursed for any events /spending /meals most people were not allowed to book their own flights. It wasn't until later on that I was able to book my own flights. The entire purchasing department and none of the sales force were allowed to book their own flights. The owner did it, and if he could save $60 by adding to layovers or making your flight a day, he would do it. Never mind the lost productivity and what that costs. We saved $60 on your ticket. Kept an opiate addict around because he was a good welder and carpenter and would fix/build anything the owner wanted on the weekend for $60, a pack of smokes, and a case of beer. The addict regularly destroyed equipment, stole, lied, and worked whatever hours he wanted. When my predecessor tried to fire him, the owner overruled, and after that the addict could basically do whatever he wanted because there were clearly no repercussions. I did eventually fire this guy, and I still have the voicemail saved where he called up and begged for his job back after he had threatened violence against me and vandalism against my property. We had a plow truck that was in need of a wiring harness. The addict employee mentioned above had done something while borrowing the truck with the owner's permission and the truck caught on fire. The truck was an older V30 Chevy truck, but it was in decent shape and worked well. I ordered a wiring harness from Painless and figured I'd install it on a weekend and get the truck working again for $600. The owner traded that truck and $5,000 for a 2002 F250 4XL regular cab with 275,000 miles on it. The Super Duty frame and suspension were completely rotten and the truck needed a rear end, brakes, brake lines, and fuel lines in the first year. I'm sure the guy that made that trade laughed all the way to the bank, coming away with $5K and a clean square bodied Chevy 1-ton that had an SM 465, NP 205, 14 bolt, Dana 60, and only needed a wiring harness to be back on the road. I wasn't allowed to hire a lawn care company to do the mowing, so we had to have employees do it. The owner bought a used $400 riding mower that had 4 flat tires, no belts, and no battery from, you guessed it, the addict guy. I was not allowed to have a company credit card, but I did have a company Lowe's card, so I bought a cheap push mower over there and we used that to mow until years later when I was allowed to hire a mowing company. Wow. I couldn't imagine dealing with someone like that. I get working within your means, but this is just extreme and completely insane. Do you know how the business is going now? You walk in and none of the employees greet you, if not outright ignore you. You realize it's a very cliquey place. Duck office politics. Nursing is terrible for this. I walked into one job as a part of an interview with the boss and they all just stared. Nobody said anything. Total cliquey political hellhole of a place, predictably. I interviewed for a company that had a recruiter after me pretty hard. The company was just moving into my market and the reviews on Glassdoor definitely mentioned people being frustrated with the bro culture. All of my interviews were over FaceTime with the managers showing up in their pajamas from home and admitting that, since the company is still growing, the workload was pretty much 7 days a week until you got your new team hired and running. It just wasn't very professional, and it was obvious they didn't have structure or care about people's time. I also don't trust companies that brag about things like Nerf gunfights around the office and constant happy hour events. Those perks are fun, but it's clear when that's all they talk about in the job posting that they're trying to distract you from other issues. I need to see that your company culture is enriching and creates success, not free lunches. I'm glad someone else sees red flags with the Nerf gunfights / happy hours. All I see is a forced smile through gritted teeth. I'm sure it can be done right, but I have yet to see it. I can think of a few specific examples. When I was younger, I was in between my dad's house and my eventually wife, and then ex-wife's parents' house, kind of living both places, but I was transitioning to move in with her family. We lived about 50 minutes apart. She stayed with me on occasion at my dad's too. This all becomes relevant. I applied at the McDonald's in her town just trying to do anything. Well, I got a call one morning at 7 AM. MCD manager says interview in 25 minutes. We were at my dad's and that call woke me up. So I told him, look, I'm almost an hour away, there's no way I make that. He said, then I guess you don't want the job that badly. Today me would have told him to jog off, but back then me jumped in the shower and together me and my ex-lady sped 120 through country roads and somehow managed to make it just in time. I gave my best damn interview. He never called me back. A job for online Apple tech support through a third party working from home. In the interview they told me they'd send me a Mac to work from and a phone to use. I was a little smarter than them in example A, so I had questions. My main red flag popped when she said you're responsible for the equipment and the cost of any repairs if it breaks. Okay, makes sense. But I asked, are these new devices? She danced around the question, but I was persistent. Finally she said no, they're refurbished. So my next question was, so if you send this Mac to me and day 2 it stops working because of some non-damage issue, do I still have to pay the repair? Yeah, apparently I would, and these suckers are not cheap. After that she said, I don't know if this job is right for you because I ask strong questions to see if I could get ducked over by you guys. Yeah, maybe not. TL. Dr. McManager on a power trip didn't even call me back after I went double the speed limit to make his outrageous time demand. And sketchy work from home job wanted to give me possibly janky hardware and then charge me if it stopped working. Got defensive when I asked if that was really the case. The second job sounds like a scam, honestly. Buy a junk computer, have it maybe break down, and if it does, the user buys another one and the company gets to revoke it when you're fired. Which happened to my wife once before she knew me, and trust me, as soon as you pay out of pocket for a new computer, they will find anything to fire you, like breaking a computer for example. You dodged a bullet you didn't even know you dodged, or rather dodged the larger sized bullet you thought was smaller. This is the biggest red flag of them all. Hey Sweaty, I have an amazing business opportunity for you. How would you like to be your own boss, the CEO of your own company, and become a millionaire just from working on your? It's so easy. All you have to do is trick other people into joining your team and they will do all the work for you while you take most of their profits. So what do you say? Insert victim's name here. Wanna join my team? It's only $499.99 for a starter pack. You gotta spend to make. Hey Jurley. Hey guy. What you been up to? I got a great opportunity just for you. How'd ya like to make $80,000 a year? Selling top tier products from your home right here. How's it work? Let me tell ya, first I sell you lots of crap. Now your is on the line to push the products in your lap. Well, that's great, cause on Facebook I have 700 friends. You can spam them all with messages until your friendship ends. Lularo and Yaunique Mary K up on these cheeks. You'll be drinking so much Herbalife you're gonna chiz for weeks. Hey you guys. But some knives. Now your debt is on the rise, and you're sleeping on the couch, so that your wife won't hear you cry. Remember back in high school, when I thought I was so smart? I can't believe we fell for this. Our lives are torn apart. Not feeling like a boss, babe. Not seeing any perks. Not sure why people fall for this. The system never works. When looking at compensation figures, bear in mind that up to X includes the number 0. Places who always say they're hiring and always taking applications, but you never actually see anyone new being trained or anything. It means people are quitting constantly and management isn't hiring new people, so they are critically understaffed on top of poorly managed. Looking at you, Home Depot, with your 5 employees and permanent hiring sign. If the job asks for money to begin, we'll hide this behind we just need $90 for the piss test and $180 for the marketing training. Definitely not talking from my scam days personal experience. This is my #1 red flag. I've actually never seen this flag on a legit business before. You have to buy a kit. Scam. You need to pay the company or one that they are contracted to for training first. Scam. Need to buy job supplies? Still a scam. Any legit business is forced to compensate you if you have to buy any product or service. To start making money, it is a pyramid scheme / MLM, multi-level marketing, that has a 1% chance at best of making you pennies per hour if you continue the chain by defrauding others. I think it's a weird question to ask a prospective employer, but an important one. What are your company values? It's kinda like asking on a first date your date's life philosophy. But man, it becomes evident when a company has no values. And if you don't have anything to strive for other than $1, your employees won't last. Make sure you word this correctly too. They may have their values on their website, but really they don't practice what they preach. They can see this as that you really didn't research the company. I'm going to be using what did your company do for employees during COVID-19. If you're the kind of person who likes a 9-to-5 job, this may not be right for you. That's perfect. I like to work from about 10 AM to 3 PM. I'll need an hour for lunch. Reaching out to potential clients likely refers to cold calling. Duck that. I hate how modern speech is filled to the brim with doublespeak to sound cool. Pisses me off. I wish more chiz just called a spade a spade. At one of my old jobs, my chiz-t boss was trying to give a potential client the pitch. He told him we had technology to track data. It was Bitly, the site where you can change the link of websites to make them prettier and keep track of clicks. What a damn tool. If you are expected to work right off without sufficient training, it reflects poorly on the company's management and likely also means that they don't care about the employees. Had a cashier job kind of like this. Was partnered with existing cashiers for the first couple weeks for them to train me. It sort of made sense in context. Management had no idea how the poses worked, so cashiers had to train each other. But it also created this disconnect when one of us hit an issue we couldn't solve, or when customers asked us to perform a transaction we'd never done before. Air miles was a huge, frustrating thing. Not only that, but I was there for about 9 months and had been promised OHSA training within the first 3. Never got it. Quit for a number of reasons, but the point is, when you minimum wages are training each other for no extra pay, something has gone wrong. Unfortunately, I have worked for a couple of places that hired roughly 75 plus people 3 times per week at several locations, just to keep up with turnover. Long personality quizzes during the application. They're a huge red flag that the manager is incompetent. I had to fill one of these out for my current job, and they actually created a whole profile showing strengths and weaknesses, and you can schedule a review meeting to go over it and develop goals based off of it. From the few people in my department who bothered to get this sent to them, it was surprisingly accurate, and the management tips listed on mine are actually how I work best being managed as well. I'm sure in some cases it is a load of BS, but I was pleasantly surprised. I was recently, roughly 2 months ago, given a job offer from a company I was really interested in. The job sounded great, was in a career path I was originally hoping for when graduating, and was back in my hometown, so I could see some old friends and family regularly. When they made me an offer, it was a pretty big pay cut from what I'm currently making. Actual salary would have been flat out even. I hate my current job, so that would have been okay by me. However, I would be losing a week of vacation, a week of paid sick time, getting slightly worse benefits, and half of what my current company offers in 401k matching. When I asked what was available for negotiation, they got mad at me. In fact, they expected me to make this life-altering decision in 24 hours with little to no questions asked, and got even more mad that I wanted to negotiate my ducking life instead of just say yes or no. So, I ended up just walking away. I hate my current bosses, but not enough to walk away from 4 weeks of vacation and an extra week of sick leave. And especially not for, given the signs, people who will treat me the exact same way as my bosses. Sounds a lot like every hiring situation I've known for myself and my friends in public education. We're offering you the job, we're placing you at the bottom of the salary guide, and we need your decision within the hour. Have also heard people who tried to negotiate getting credit for their years of service in the salary guide, being told if you don't want the job at step 1 we will find someone who does. Test task that looks like real work they need to be done. Also, if you're applying for any job and have to submit your own work, this especially applies in entertainment. If it feels like you have the job before your interview. I once applied to a trainee position. I got to the interview, and it felt like I had already got the position and the meeting was just for details. It was weird. He looked at my docs more as a formality, but apart from the excessive praise, I was never actually asked anything. I was told I would do a week trial with only travel expenses paid. During that week there was no training or anything. I heard some not nice things, also some illegal things. Whilst there, the boss was making plans to go out of the country for an extended period within 2 months, and I'd be taking over for him, as well as expected to bring in clients too. Also, I wasn't deemed to be working fast enough, and therefore they wanted to pay me less than $4 an hour. I didn't go back. If they ask you to pay for training, that's usually a red flag that it's a MLM or pyramid scheme. If they ask you to buy stuff on commission and then it's your job to resell it, big ol' red flag. I've had job interviews where the whole company gave me a weird vibe. Lots of psychology questions like, do you like to be in control? While sitting in an office building with zero privacy. All of the offices had glass walls, so everyone could see everyone else. Needless to say, I didn't accept their offer. We are family around here means they are ready to gaslight the living hell out of you. That, and there is probably rampant nepotism at that company. Brothers, wives, sons, nephews, cousins, etc. None of them are qualified for their jobs, but they have all the power. I saw a job posting last week in which one of the requirements was to keep your desk tidy. If they are willing to put that in the ad, the office is run by control freaks. Stay away, or that company has been bought by a Japanese one. Happened to one of the biggest online store in France, was bought by a Japanese company, and there was immediately a new rule to clean your desk every morning. Bullshit job descriptions that are so vague they could be anything. Need someone who is a rockstar in / fill in the blank. Really? You want someone who is just charismatic? That's it? What does that even mean? Sure, I can do tons of cocaine at work and be charismatic as hell. Doubt that would help your company. I saw one that said sales ninja. So do I need to kill the clients or? When the principal reason for letting someone go was simply, they just didn't fit in here. This can be code for that person was a mild lazy piece of chiz, but we can't say that cause frivolous lawsuits. Spelling mistakes in the post. As a copy editor, this would be my cue to take over someone's job. It's common in my industry for you to be interviewed separately by 3 or 4 different people. They will typically all be people that you will be working with or for, e.g., the hiring manager and 2 teammates. I've taken to asking each of them to describe what they see as the day-to-day duties and priorities of the role. If they don't align, it's a warning sign that no one knows exactly what they are hiring for. In the 90s, when restaurant job posts were in newspapers, I made sure to avoid those that seemed to have an annual subscription to the help wanted section. If they are always hiring, people are always leaving. I can get that with sales and marketing, but if you are burning through cooks and dishwashers every week, something must be amiss with management. Take this advice with a grain of salt. Every restaurant I've worked at, good, bad, and mediocre, all had a high employee turnover rate. You all wear different hats in this role. First of all, this is a stupid ducking phrase. Secondly, you just mean you're going to make me do 6 different jobs and underpay me for them all. I had an interview once where the owner asked me how many sick days do you think is appropriate to take every year. I was kind of taken aback and said something like as many as you are actually sick. He looks me dead in the eye and says the average is 3. I knew it was a red flag, but I was desperate for a job at the time. Sure enough, it was the worst job I've ever had. He was a professional micromanager and treated everyone like we were idiots. This was a job that required a master's degree. I left for something much better 6 months later. Half the staff followed soon after. I applied for a different department at a previous job. It was obvious the lady interviewing me did not like me. Towards the end of the interview she came out and told me she was very concerned about how often I called into work. I had gotten the flu and had taken off 3 days in the previous year. She said that was unacceptable and that her staff had to be reliable. I basically stood up and walked out at that point. I was once called to arrange an interview for a job in the medical field and the woman wanted me to show up for the interview without telling me what company it was, what was the job description, etc. She told me we'll discuss during the interview and asked me to be in an address at a specific time 2 days later. It seemed way sketchy and I had already a second interview somewhere and pretty sure I would get the job, so I cancelled this thing. To this day I wonder what that was about. MLM. When they can't return a call or keep you updated about your onboarding. Interviewer for a shift manager job at Wendy's asked me to quit college, said I needed to always be available to them if they needed me. Never mind that he was over an hour late to my interview. No, I will not quit college for $9 an hour. Job descriptions ending in and other duties as required. Some managers love to leverage that line, as if by signing your contract you signed away your soul. You can go to anyone with questions. Equals we don't have enough formal training or good reference materials, so ask around and hope someone knows how to do the task you're aimed. I arrived at a pharmacy for an interview. I asked to speak with the manager who had made the appointment with me. I waited 20 minutes before he came over and said he forgot about the interview. Asked me to email him a copy of my resume and have my last employer call him. I walked out of there with his card and threw it in the garbage. Have your last employer call him? What a strange request. We offer flexible hours. Means that you will never have a set week-to-week schedule. You will never be able to make plans more than a week in advance, and you will probably get stuck with turnaround shifts. Closing then opening. Close bracket. I think that depends on the jobs. For a lot of office jobs it can also mean they have core hours, like 10 to 3, but you can start as early as 7 or 8 am and get off early, or come in as late as 10 am but stay late. Def something to get clarity on in the interview. Extremely short interviews and overly technical questions. I've been interviewed several times by tech companies that clearly didn't read my resume or just about anyone else's. They'll base too much on your current knowledge and certs instead of on your ability to learn and willingness for a job. Once had an interview last 15 minutes. No questions about prior experience, no specific questions about me. Set up the interview with the hiring company literally the day before. Asked about the specifics of how a TCP conversation worked. Seemed genuinely surprised when I couldn't remember one barely used flag. Felt like I was taking the CCNA all over again. Useless knowledge and all, and they scoffed every time I missed a question. No thank you at the end of the interview. No real signal that they cared about me at all. Next day I received an offer from a different company. Their interview was heavenly and the day before that nightmare interview, they wanted to know about me, my motivations, interests, hobbies, and genuinely tried to get to know me and how I learn. They treat me so well and try to work with me on everything. I found out that the other company I had interviewed for was a failing SOC lovingly known as a revolving door from friends and colleagues. I used to work as a network engineer. I think book knowledge is good, but yeah, when things go badly, I'd rather hire someone who had like 50% of the book down, but can stay calm and manage expectations. Most of my job was doing client visits, so I would be going to offices and meeting people who knew next to nothing about computers. Do you really think they're gonna be blown away by me describing their LAN setup? Or do you think they'd appreciate the guy who was personable and could simplify everything to them? There are so many people on the spectrum in that industry though, so your experience does not surprise me. When the company is very inefficient during the hiring process, it's time to back away. Deleted. Is this on personal level? When you see a black leather couch in an empty room, that's only a red flag if you're not expecting it. When the only people there have been with the company for ages and you're the only new guy, that probably means you're just looking at an old boys club and they are absolute tricks to new employees and drive them away. That can also be a good sign. Those old timers have stayed with the same employer after all. Better than we're all new here. Anyways. I recall a woman in an interview telling me that the last employee left them in the lurch and she needed to fill the position immediately. She pressed me for a commitment before I was ready. We had only had a phone interview, so had never actually met. Plus I had a promising interview somewhere else, and I was waiting to hear back. But I was desperate to get out of my current situation, so I took it. She turned out to be my worst employer so far in my career. At one point I tried to quit, and she took me out to lunch and pressured me into staying. When I finally did quit, I did it by written note, since I knew she would try to talk me out of it. I also immediately took my check to her bank to have it cashed. It turned out to be a smart move, because she bitched about me slamming my paycheck through at the bank when she called me in a rage. After finding my note, she had contacted them to stop my paycheck, but it was too late. It turned out to be a smart move, because she bitched about me slamming my paycheck through at the bank when she called me in a rage. After finding my note, she had contacted them to stop my paycheck, but it was too late. I would have replied, you can complain to the Department of Labor about that. If their office is pin drop quiet, not one person having a conversation or any chatting going on anywhere. Every time this has happened, it's become apparent everyone is afraid of one or two specific people in management and everyone is just browbeaten. If they're looking for a large number of people to fill multiple positions, typically means that something happened to make a lot of people quit, or means that company has a high turnover rate. As a software developer, I ask to see the office while the devs are at work. If it's too quiet, I see that as a bad sign. I look at see people pair programming or discussing design decisions, doing code reviews, etc. I'm looking for a relaxed but engaged atmosphere. The red flags for me are people sitting alone at their computers, staring desperately at the screen, unable to seek help, everyone under so much workload that the office is deathly quiet. I want to see people helping each other. Also, I want to see automated unit testing and reasonably well spec'd out stories before they go into points poker. Code should be clean, easily read, and comments used sparingly to illustrate not what, but why they've decided to do things that way. I want to see automated build and deployment systems in place. In the car park, I don't want to see the boss car as many times the worth of the scrappiest car in the car park. That's a sign that the boss is exploiting the workers. Infrastructure, the elevators and toilets should work, and there should be a kitchen with a working sink and microwave. Flexi time should mean flexi time, not you have to convince the partners that you'll not abuse the privilege of working an hour earlier or later, and once you do, your new times are carved in stone for all eternity. When the interviewer says, I don't want to tell you our company's name because you might Google and see some bad reviews, it was Amway. When the interviewer has been with the company for less than a year, this one's a yellow, not a red. Be cautious, but proceed. Sometimes the manager is brought in from outside and then has to hire on more staff. I was hired by a guy who interviewed me before he'd been there a week, and I worked there for 8 months before I tried to go back to university. I did a ton of interviews in the last year and had many red flag experiences. 1. Audition type interviews. Was asked to come in for an interview about 40 minutes away for an insurance underwriter position. Walked into a huge room of about 20 people. They showed us a video about the company to hype it up about salaries and such, then proceeded to bring in several employees who talked about how much they loved it there and the amount of money they bring in. The only interaction from us was asking what each of us took away from the experience. They ended up calling me back for follow-up interview several times, saying that they were very impressed by me. New way after hearing that there was an upfront cost and largely commission based. Basically set up like a pyramid scheme where you sold insurance to people in their homes. Sad part is that many of the people there were all about it and excited to be there too. Next one, I had an initial interview scheduled for 9 AM that lasted about 10 minutes. They had me wait in the lobby and do my second interview immediately after in a local coffee shop with a very young girl who had just graduated college. I was 26 at the time, so they probably assumed a younger person would get me in the door. The girl was super nice, and we hit it off, but I could tell she was hyping up the position a lot too. Went back and straight into my third interview, where they went on and on about how much she liked me and wanted me on the team. Fast forward to a few days later, I get a call from the same recruiter that initially got me the interview saying that my resume was a good fit and they wanted me for an interview. I explained that I had gone through 3 interviews a few days ago and the whole process. She was like, "Alright, you're that, my name. Well, we actually wanted to offer you the job." Declined that job and completely changed my job search after that. Ninja Rockstar Guru. If the person that had your job before lasted less than a year, if when you ask the hours of a normal day and they say it's technically 9 to 5, but we often stay late, that means you're never leaving at 5, and if you do, you'll be cheese talked. Always read the contract with a fine-tooth comb. I went through the training for one job. They flew us out to Georgia, provided room and board and everything. It was a new kind of contracting company that guaranteed employment for its contractors. Then I sat down to read the contract. These 3 parts caught my eye in unrelated sections of the contract. When we send you to a client, you will send them our version of your resume. We will include items you have no skills in to reflect our support staff for you being available. You waive the right to change your resume from what we provide you when interacting with these clients. Presenting a resume to a client with false information is grounds for termination. If you quit or are terminated in the first 6 months, you will owe the company $10,000 for training. Training consisted of going through a bunch of free online tutorials as a class. In short, as soon as you signed that paperwork, they could turn around and fire you to make a cool $10K gross profit. After I realized that, I refused to sign and explained the reason. They got upset really quickly saying, "We all signed the same contract, we won't change it," and immediately sent me home so I wouldn't talk to the other employees in training. I feel sorry for those who did sign it. That sounds predatory as duck. Is there any chance that kind of predation would be illegal? It stuns me that people in the UK don't look at publicly available data on companies' house tax returns, incoming/outgoings, etc. So many colleagues have joined organizations that look on paper pretty shaky and turned out to be just that. British friends, check company's house. If you see something that looks bad, ask at your job interview. It'll make you look smart too. We wear many hats translates to we don't hire enough people for each position, so you're going to have to do 2 or 3 people's jobs. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.